mine because I was constantly mind boggled. Barb Nelson gave this to me. I used to keep it on my desk. Anyways, as they said, I was chairman and the foreman, but I had a lot more public life than that. When I moved to the island in '72, Ted Gary had just kind of completed his redo. The marina and the golf course were pretty much in place. The game farm was, that was really quite an elaborate place, and I never did see that used very much. Other than to take their pheasants when they got out on the road. The marina and golf course had just been completed. The pub was there for a couple of years, and that year I'd go to work on the golf course, up on the golf course, building the condos with Neil Schultz's Madeline Island Construction, pretty much run by Ted Ockenick. And then the next summer I started working for Harry Nelson and continued with the Nelsons for 20 years. When I moved here, I thought it was kind of unique. The North Shore Road, I think between Donna Woods' and Devil's Cauldron, there was maybe 2 structures, possibly 5. There was Hillis's and Bob Maxwell's, I don't know, and Jack Robleski's were all in the early stage of construction, but it was kind of, wasn't much out there. South Shore Road didn't have electricity on most of it, and things just went crazy after that. So then, the various town positions I held, the first way I was involved with the town, I was on the first zoning committee, and I tried to pick Mike Eldred's brain about that. I don't remember it all that well, other than Elmer kind of running the show, and if he thought he needed some help in a decision, he would call a meeting, but that was not very often. Zoning was a contentious issue, and always has been and always will be. And the town was struggling with coming up with what would work for us. An architectural review board, I don't think ever got off the ground.
Yeah, it did.
Well, they didn't. They weren't in place very long, but
They reviewed our house.
They did mine.
did they?
Yeah.
They did mine too.
And they wanted to, they weighed in on the color of the walls and the roof.
I think that probably was the end of them then. And something, I think zoning was kind of initiated because I remember Harry telling me that the DNR wasn't gonna allow much more development around here without a sewer. And so the town had to put a sewer in, and to do that, there had to be a zoning ordinance, is the way I understand it. Evan's shaking his head, I guess I remembered it right. I remember hearing stories of fecal matter floating around in downtown La Pointe, so it was really needed. It was really needed. And I also then was on the Board of Adjustment for a few years and was the chairman of that. And I don't really remember much about that other than wrestling with Tommy all the time over his, whatever he wanted to do, look for another loophole. But mostly on that land that became Penny Lane, he had a house set there. I don't know how many people remember that, but he had started his collection then, and that was that. The next thing I remember was I was chairman of the road committee, and I don't quite remember why a road committee was started. I think it might have had something to do with Craig O'Brien developing those roads down there, and they were sort of substandard, and you know, I was working for Arnie and we built them, and we thought we had built a pretty good road, but you can't build a good road without a gravel surface. So anyways, there was a road committee started, and we would meet, and we were trying to come up with a plan. I mean, if you drove around the island, and if your tires touched the grass on the side, you were gonna be in the ditch. There were no ditches. There was times when my wife almost got stuck going out on the North Shore Road when the frost was coming on the road with four-wheel drive. You know, the roads were pretty terrible for a while. The road committee, I don't remember exactly what we did, but I remember Bob Schaub was on it, and he owned Devil's Cauldron, and the reason he got on the committee is because he was really worried we were gonna cut down too many trees and open things up too much. But he also lived in Asheville, North Carolina at the time, and one time he flew out here for a meeting and submitted a voucher for reimbursement. I kind of laughed at him and I said, I don't think this is gonna work. Yeah. The workshops, when I was a town foreman, they said there's 3 ways to build a road that are necessary for a good road. And that's drainage, drainage, and drainage. And that's what we try to adhere to. And by the time I got on the town board, Greg Nelson was the foreman, and he had implemented a plan, a really good plan. He would rent an excavator and try to do a section of road, ditching the road. And he would work at nights with his dad getting the necessary trees out of the way. And so little by little, he picked his way up the North Shore Road. I guess the South Shore Road was done by Nelson Construction. We must have found some funding to do that. I don't remember. That's not even in my notes. But yeah, Greg did a great job, and by the time I became foreman, the roads were basically ditched. But that's part of the reason he quit, because he was kind of mad at us for not giving him enough money for gravel, because he wanted to put a certain amount of gravel down after each year, and I don't know, it wasn't in the budget. It was just, at that time, that was a big expenditure, and we could only do so much. The county roads weren't much better. My mother and Lorraine Motisi raised such hell that Tommy Thompson came up here and actually helped the county get that road done. And that actually was started the first big gravel barging project on the island. And a lot of gravel came over here, and it enabled the town to do some fixing up as well on their roads. So then after, well, I've kind of covered a little bit of the foreman, but I don't remember why I got on the town board exactly.
It was your turn.
I guess my wife had been on the town board, and she was a clerk, sanitary district clerk, and I don't know, I don't think there was, I guess I just didn't like the way things are going, and I don't think there was a level of transparency that there should have been. And so I got on the town board, and there was only 3 members. I was appointed because somebody had resigned, and it wasn't more than a couple of years after that we went to a 5-person board, and then it started getting, I don't know if there was, if board members made money before that, but maybe a couple bucks, but at that time, the townspeople voted everybody a $400, you're on the town board, you get $400 a month, and that got people running. And Mike was just telling me that I didn't think it had changed, but I guess they got a $40 raise a year or so ago. So that stayed in place for almost 30 years,
The
basically.
town chairman did 650.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, through all this, you know, the town went through unprecedented growth, and the town board was just getting slammed, and about that time, that's when I became chairman, and the two things that stick out at me the most was, first of all, was the debacle of getting office space and a fire hall. That, we had a committee, they put a lot of work into it, they didn't get a lot of input. I think they got input from the board, but not from the townspeople, but they came up with a plan, and they hired George Hecker's firm, and George Hecker drew up a set of plans. We paid $7,000 for them. We were all ready to go ahead, and then all of a sudden, 3 of my friends sued us. And so we called a special town meeting and hashed it out and started another committee? Or,
It was a public hearing, it was at the school was full.
yeah, but it was a special town meeting that was at the school. And I think another committee was formed to come up with a different idea.
Yeah.
This room right here was, I mean, I don't remember how many, I think Mike pointed it out. I think there was like 7 desks here. People trying to do the jobs. Waggy had a desk, the clerk had a desk, the sanitary clerk, the zoning administrator, the chief of police. And there was extension cords and power strips all over the place. It was just a real cluster. But,
So you were suing Keith because they didn't like the plan?
the plan initially was the fire hall was gonna be added to the end of this building. Go all the way to Red Eldred's property. And plus, a lot of people didn't like George Hecker's design with his reverse dormers and that kind of stuff. I thought that would have been unique, but most of the town did not like it, so we changed gears, and the site was cleared for a fire hall, and I don't know, I guess the office space had already been determined how many people we were gonna have in the office. Another thing the other thing that sticks out at me was the formation of the Winter Transportation Committee. Bruce LaRose was kind of instrumental in getting some grant money from Dave Obie, and we worked towards that, and I don't remember how that evolved. I know that Burke Henry, when he was the next chairman after me, he's the one that really put, got the ferry line, the school, and the town all involved with, and they became the Winter Transportation Group, They shared the costs of winter transportation, and then that's when we got a big wind sled and a small wind sled, and that winter transportation building was built. But that all happened when I was the foreman, because I know we put the sewer line in and prepared the site and everything. Some other things during the foreman job was, I'm not foreman, town chairman, Joanne Hennings had written a grant for a trail. And I mean, she didn't even tell anybody, she just wrote the grant, didn't thinking we'd get it. She gets a $750,000 grant, and we were all fired up. We were gonna build a trail out right through the island, from the Capture Trail to Black Shanty Road. But after doing a little bit of studying and costs, we realized that couldn't happen. Emmer Shields happened, I think he might have been on a committee even, but he put in bike trails on Big Bay Road, all the way out to Hagen Road. I don't know if it included Hagen Road or was kind of a big deal. So then I became town foreman after I was chairman. When I took the job, I was hoping that I could keep my septic business, but I wasn't able to find worthy help, so I had to sell it, much to my chagrin, and I went about being town foreman. My first order of business was, downtown really bugged me. There was no drainage, there was just ditches. People walked on the streets. Clay was drug out from Tommy's and those other uses. So there was another thing that we went to Dave Obie's 154, section 154 grants. And we got a big grant and we were able to, I think actually maybe even a couple, we were able to get storm sewer all through downtown so we could eliminate the ditches that were inadequate to begin with and put in sidewalks, and we got some new surfaces, and it was, when that happened, I got a real education and really started getting more interested in history, because I found out with the U.S. Corps of Army Engineers administering this, you had to go through the NEPA Act, which is the National Environmental Policy Act or something like that. And when you have federal money, then you have to comply with all these, with environmental challenges and also native challenges, and we had tribes, started putting us through the ringer, and so I grabbed the Mishomis book and became a little more informed about what they were talking about, and I found that really fascinating. And since then, I've read many books about the Anishinaabe and that, but that was kind of an eye-opener for me. And that same happened with all the rest of the grants we got when I was foreman. Found other grants for bike lanes on Mundane Trail, an old fort, and then along that time, the county road needed a new resurface already. So we tried to figure out how to get gravel over here since it's cost 5 times as much here as it does on the island. I mean, on the mainland. And so somehow we formed another committee that Emmer Shields was a part of, and Jerry Smith and Dick Hoffman. It was a good committee, and people put a lot of work into it. And Emmer came up with the idea of using the Michigan Tech students for a study to see if they would come up with a way to get gravel over here cheaper. Emmer already had the idea of using a big freighter type ship and having it anchored and then using conveyor belts, kind of coming up from the sewer outfall, convey it right to the airport. And so he charged the Michigan Tech students to try and come up with a plan, and also we asked them for a study, which is in town hall here somewhere, about, given our gravel costs, would it be cheaper to have the North Shore Road and all the town roads blacktop versus gravel? Since gravel, initially gravel's cheaper, but to maintain it properly, it becomes more expensive when you have poor grading practices and big storms and snow plowing and the dust, and there's just, it just, at one point I thought it would be cheaper for blacktop. Well, the Michigan Tech students didn't think so, and I can't remember all the reasons. I kind of looked more just at the bottom line. And so we went on from there, and that's when we had, the whole county road was redone, a bunch of town roads were done, and we were able to put a gravel surface on all the town roads, although we didn't do Anderson Lane. But I hear it's been done since. But, yeah.
Keith, what happened with the idea of conveyor belts with the gravel in Sunset Bay going straight to the airport?
I guess it didn't seem feasible. Couldn't find a shipping, actually, they were talking to shipping companies and everything, and none of them liked the idea of, you know, having a 500-foot ship, you know, kind of moored out in the open lake there with gravel, trying to have conveyors and stuff set up. So that's as much as I remember. Yeah, then one of my last project was the town park, which was controversy as well. I was one of the few people in town that, I mean, it costs a lot of money to operate that park and to maintain it. I just thought, you know, the state would have considered buying it. And I thought that we should, you know, for $2 or $3 million, we could have sold to the state and maintained our parks into eternity with that money. But the townspeople didn't agree with me, so the town board went along with me, and we got a grant to improve the town park and add campsites, which a lot of people love now, and the town park now pays for itself annually. But last I heard, it did anyways. And helps pay for other parks too, I guess. At that time, yeah, that's another thing I never even mentioned. When I was town chairman, the town hired its first administrator, and that turned into a debacle. And it kind of soured people on it all. And then they never hired another one to repeat that, right? And when he came on board, it was kind of mixed blessings for the town park, because he was able to do some of that, but helped me administer it. But I didn't agree with everything he did, and pretty soon I just let him handle it all. And I think a lot of that's a good thing, because there's flush toilets there now. If it would have been up to me, there would have been pit toilets. And just because of cost, but it works, and I guess the holding tanks are paid for by the campers, so. And another project that I enjoyed was fixing up the Miller Farm Road for those people that were going through hell trying to maintain their own road. And at the same time, I tried to get the people that live on Big Arns Road and Bryan's Road to go in on this too, but they didn't want to be part of a town road. But we went ahead with the Miller Farm Road, and we got that done, and now it's a town road. Actually, so is Bryan's Road now too, so that all worked out well. And I worked for the Madeline Island Wilderness Preserve a bit on invasive species, which I think they keep up the battle, and buckthorn, I think, is slowly but surely dying back, but I see MIPA needs to mow theirs again. Also, the Madeline Island Wilderness Preserve helped with the Capsa Trail. That was our first project that involved 2 or 3 different grants that I think the Wilderness Preserve paid for, and the town had to use the town labor to build it. That all turned out pretty good, I think. And at Mike Stark's request, we found grant money to build a trail way at the north end of the island down to the lake because there was going to be so much development. Ice fishermen had always just gone down through whatever road they could to get to the lake and basically trespassing, and that became frowned upon. So my brother Jeff somehow had got the town to buy a piece of land out there that Lorraine calls Suicide Cliff. But we built a trail down to that, and then that worked kind of well, although it, and I see a lot of people using it actually, but it needs some work, I think. And then I retired as foreman in 2014, and right after the park was opened, and got in my camper and went to Alaska. I still stayed on the sanitary district board as a member and a chairman until the town board saw fit to replace me. And we did get a big upgrade with the sewer plant with more section 154 fund grant money. And now I hear that needs to be done. They're gonna redo that again. The island just keeps growing. It just keeps growing. And that's all I have to say. Anybody?